Hello, hello, hola, hola, bienvenidos, bienvenidas, welcome. Welcome to Breaking the Burnout Cycle. My name is Alba Leal. I am an organizational psychologist, art therapist, and burnout researcher. I'm truly excited to be here with you today because before becoming a psychologist, I was a tech project manager in Silicon Valley. So I know firsthand what it feels like to be in the middle of constant deadlines, high pressure, and in a situation where slowing down feels almost impossible. That personal experience is what led me to study burnout deeply and to dedicate my work to helping people and communities find healthier, more sustainable ways to succeed. I have founded mesientoquemada.com, where I support professional women with preventing and managing work stress and burnout. So we have already had such a full day of so much information, so many great insights. Now I invite you to take a brief moment to pay attention to your body. So let's give it a little break. Wherever you are, just roll your shoulders back, stretch your arms overhead, maybe take a little gentle twist side to side. Feels good, doesn't it? Okay. And now let's take a deep breath together. Inhale through the nose, hold for 2 seconds, and then exhale slowly through your nose. Okay, let's do it. This is proven science. Oxygenating your brain improves focus, reduces stress, and helps you absorb information better. Want to do it one more time? All right, let's do it. Inhale deeply, hold for a couple of seconds, and let it go slowly. Beautiful. Now that we have stretched and breathed, let's begin. Here's what I want us to accomplish today. I invite you to make comments or ask questions on the chat. I will also stay after the presentation a few more minutes to answer questions, right? And you will also get my contact information. Siempre la orden. Okay, so the goals for today is understand the difference between stress and burnout, recognize hidden patterns and beliefs about work, explore practical strategies to protect your energy and sustain your career, and connect with the power of community in breaking the burnout cycle. And that is part of a Techqueria's event, right? Comunidad, finding support in la comunidad. All right, so there it is, an image from downtown San Francisco and the word hustle. So when you see the word hustle, what do you feel? Is it excitement, drive, ambition, or is it pressure, exhaustion, that feeling that it's never enough? Send me your comments via chat. I'd love to hear. Making things happen, ambition, survival mode, getting ahead, running on empty. So as I mentioned earlier, I know a thing or two about the hustle culture because I was there. I lived it. And to be honest, I loved it. The speed, the late nights, that sense of building something greater than yourself. Hustle built a lot of what we admire in our industry. But hustle also had a cost. And I lived it firsthand as well, right? that feeling of feeling empty despite my professional achievements. I also know that some people struggle with loneliness, dependency, and that quiet sense of disconnection. It's like an emptiness behind the achievement. And in reality, hustle can make sense when it's for a project, a sprint, a launch, a clear purpose. But when hustle becomes the default setting without pause, without direction, it just stops building and starts breaking. And here's the thing, it isn't only the relentless pace of the industry or the grind culture. Many of us grew up with cultural and family beliefs that glorifies that behavior. So have you heard phrases like this? Gotta get pushing, hay que echarle ganas. You have to give to get. Hay que dar del ala para comer de la pechuga. Hay que morir con las botas puestas. Die with your boots on. Can you think of any other phrases? Success doesn't sleep. Gotta pay your dues. Grind now, shine later. Si ven tu esfuerzo, te van a recompensar. If they see your effort, you'll be rewarded. These are small but powerful messages that shape how we see work, effort, and success. And if there's one thing I want you to take away today is this invitation. Look around you. If you're feeling stressed out or burned out, whether it's a lot or a little, do not ignore it. Ask yourself what is happening in your work environment that is truly wearing you down. And it's not just about complaining on autopilot, right? But about observing carefully what the triggers are. Identify those external dynamics that drain you. And also identify your own beliefs, those messages that are embedded in our minds that we repeat without questioning about what it means to work and to achieve. And most importantly, learn to listen to your body because the body always gives you signals before the crisis arrives. Now I ask you to observe your thoughts. What is that phrase that keeps repeating in your mind when you're under pressure? Anything comes to mind? Want to share it? Another common belief is that stress is bad, but stress is not the enemy. It's unavoidable. And in the right doses, it can actually be healthy. Stress is what helps us focus, sharpens our performance, and reminds us that something matters. The problem is not stress itself, but the problem is when it becomes chronic and constant, or when we don't know what is triggering it. That's what wears us down. Because stress is a response that our body gives to danger, to excitement. It's what protects us. So the goal is not to eliminate stress altogether, but to befriend it, to notice it, to regulate it, and let it move through you instead of taking over. Think of it as a messenger, as a friend that taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, pay attention, this matters. Now, I ask you, is this friend whispering lovingly on your ear or yelling so loud it paralyzes you? So, if stress isn't always bad, why do some people thrive under pressure while others collapse? That's because stress is a very personal experience. Each of us carries a different threshold, a threshold that is shaped by our history, our perception, our culture, and the personal resources we can lean on. For one person, something might feel like an exciting challenge, and for another person, it can be the beginning of collapse. And that is because tolerance is not fixed. It changes with age, health, the stage of life you're in, and recent experiences. What you could easily handle 5 years ago may feel impossible today, or the other way around, because it depends on context, because context matters, and it could have a tight relationship with what is happening in life. For instance, parenthood, divorce, the loss of a loved one, health, um, health issues in the family, moving to a new city. So it's not only about the workload, but about the environment where you carry it. So, in other words, a tight deadline with a supportive team can motivate you. But in a toxic workplace, the very same deadline could feel so draining and paralyzing. So now I want to talk to you about the difference between stress and burnout, because people tend to use stress and burnout as synonyms, but there are important differences. You have situational stress, right? So those are short term stresses that you go through triggered by specific circumstances. For example, running late to a meeting, giving a presentation, or dealing with a sudden deadline, launching a plum project into production. So these are stressors that usually pass once the situation resolves. It's temporary. Then you have my subject of research, work stress, occupational stress. That is when the recurring pressure from ongoing job demands begins to take a toll on your health, on your well-being. It starts lurking little by little when the work exceeds your ability to cope. But then it starts building up over time. And without relief, it can become overwhelming and eventually unbearable. People start showing signs of emotional exhaustion, cynicism, sense of failure, and then it snowballs into burnout. So when burnout appears, it's not something that can be easily reversed. It's that's why it's called a syndrome, because it's caused by chronic unrelieved stress, and it has many symptoms. Uh, it comes to a point where it doesn't improve with rest or vacation, and it's systemic. In other words, it impacts your body, your mind, your relationships, and the sense of purpose, something that you might not have questioned before. So it's like a collapse when you can't run anymore, physically or emotionally. Now, why does burnout happens? Now that we know the difference between stress and burnout, the next question is, okay, why is this happening? And it's just not about having too much work. Burnout is more complex, and it's usually the result of multiple factors coming together, as I explained before. So some of the most common factors are consistently neglecting basic needs for the sake of work, sleep, meals, exercise, rest, um, waiting too long to use the bathroom. I've seen organizations where there is a high incidence of urinary tract infections. And after digging deeper, um, we have found that people are actually holding the call of nature because they feel that they're too busy and that going to the bathroom it's a waste of time. So imagine the impact that it can have. long hours and overload without proper recovery. That is definitely something that burns anyone out. And again, if this is something that happens during a season, if you're an accountant, for instance, April is going to be very stressful, and there's going to be a lot of activity, but then hopefully you get time to recover. So, it's this constant dizziness and never ending, and you don't see the end of the tunnel. Um, Another important trigger for burnout is having little autonomy or control over your work. Also, lack of clarity or feedback. That's another one that I see very often. People don't really know what is expected of them. They don't know if what they're doing is enough. They don't even have a job description. They just show up to the office and they do whatever they're told to do. So that takes a toll because they don't really know how they're doing, or if it's enough. Also, toxic dynamics like poor communication, conflicts, or inadequate leadership, job insecurity, or constant change. Even though change is something that happens, but it's important to understand why these changes are happening, and there are ways where the company can help people cope with changes, because in some um, uh, companies, change is a constant. It's just a matter of understanding why these changes are happening. And another one is constant rumination about work or what you did or will do. That thing that happens when you go away on vacation and you are like checking on Slack and seeing, trying to talking to your coworkers to see what is happening, because somehow you have lost the ability to disconnect from work. So even though you're constantly thinking, you go to sleep, you dream about work, that happens, and it's something that really really wears you down. And of course, maybe the hardest one is suffering in silence, not talking about it, carrying the all the weight alone, which makes it twice as heavy, and that's when comunidad becomes so important. So burnout can look like mental fog and sudden mood swings. At the beginning, you start like making mistakes you never made before, and it feels like you're operating on a different frequency. Even if you sleep, you wake up tired. You then start getting physical symptoms, stomach issues, headaches, and your immune system becomes weakened, and all these signs are telling you that you're running on empty, but you don't acknowledge them. You just keep going, and at the end, burnout happens. So that's why I'm here today, to let you know that this is something that can be avoided, and it takes a little attention and acknowledgement to cut it before it happens. There are many causes of burnout, but in my work with professionals, I keep coming back to four main areas. And these are areas where stress grows and take root. Number one, corporate culture. When the environment rewards overwork and punishes rest. And this happens in many companies, but I have to say that there are many other companies that are trying to um, create a more inclusive, a more understanding, and a more human corporate culture. Um, but in reality, what happens sometimes is that people are oblivious of what is happening at work. They're not identifying that toxic factor that is rotting their environment. Uh, and in reality, um, even if you identify it, at least you know how to cope with it. Rarely one can do something about it, but it's this understanding that can help you navigate it wisely. Another factor is time management. And it's not really about lacking time or doing less. It's about lacking clarity and priorities. It's about, when you go with the flow, not establishing a structure that serves you so you can have a personal and professional life. It's saying yes to everything and going about your days without having a plan. The other one is perfectionism. It's this trap of never feeling that it's good enough. And in reality, not every task needs your 100%. Energy is a limited resource. And perfectionism, it's an illusion because it's very subjective. I might find it perfect, but Juan might think it's a total mess. So you don't have to drain yourself trying to make it so perfect, particularly if it is something that doesn't need to be perfect. The other factor that I see all the time, I just mentioned it, saying yes to everything without considering your capacity, your well-being, or priorities. And that usually happens when you have these embedded ideas or this discourse in your mind that work is, I have to do everything, I have to perform, I have to be on top of everything, um, I have to stand out. And when you are from a minority group, that idea, it's embedded on your mind, and it's something that I've seen that can be analyzed, worked on, and put into perspective. So, in other words, these are pillars that can push people closer to burnout if they are left unchecked. Of course, there are many other things because cada persona es un mundo, right? Every person is a universe, and that's why it's so important to have these conversations. Um, it's not a blanket solution. It's not an equation that can be applied to everyone. Each person has a different story, and what I'm trying to do today is to invite you to look into it. And that's exactly how you break the burnout cycle. So far, we have looked at what drives burnout and how much it comes from outdated patterns and personal beliefs, and of course, a system that prioritizes productivity and profit. And hey, productivity and profit is not bad. Organizations exist to deliver and grow. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sustainable. So, as I mentioned before, there are many companies investing real effort and resources into creating healthier workplaces. But what I've seen is that even though they offer this, people don't take advantage of it. So, if you're fortunate enough to work in one of those environments, great. Please participate and make the most of it. But in reality, at the end of the day, we are the ones responsible for our own well being. It's great that the companies are giving us these opportunities, but we should not expect organizations to carry that responsibility for us, because that's when the mismatch happens. And that is why breaking the burnout cycle starts with us, with shifting what is in our control, our mindset, our habits, and the way we respond. And if you're a leader, this will not only change you, but it will also change your team dynamics. Nick Petrie, a researcher on burnout and resilience, explains that many professionals in their 30s and 40s are still running on the same operating system they had when they first graduated. So this old code was about pleasing others, following the rules, proving your worth, and it might have worked then, but life changes. And if you continue running that operating system, it may become outdated because humans are constantly changing. Our values, interests, and expectations evolve. So our operating system has to evolve too. Now, let's talk about reframing success. Because success is not just closing the quarter strong or watching the stock price go up. Um, that's success for the company and your role in it. And of course, those achievements should be honored and celebrated. But here's the deeper question. What does success looks like for you? Because you should be the ones who defines it. I'll give you a couple of minutes to look into it. And if nothing comes up to you right now, it's okay. Just take some time and think about it. For some, success might be becoming the CEO. For others, it's buying a home for their parents or their abuelitos, or having time to raise their kids. For others, it might be doing something meaningful, maybe something at work or something within the company that is not directly related with work. Or it might be a sport they love, singing in a choir, being on a band, or doing an activity that makes them alive. That could be success for a person, and work is something to sustain that definition, and it's perfectly fine. The point is that you can define what success means. It's not your company, not the society, or the standards that no longer fit your life. After redefining success, the next step is to get clear on your values. And think of values as your internal compass. They're not goals, they are what guide your choices and tell you what really matters. For instance, if your top value is creativity, but your role is highly repetitive and rule bound, you will feel drained very, very quickly. If your top value is connection, but your job is mostly solitary with little collaboration, you may feel isolated and unfulfilled. If your top value is autonomy, but you are in a micromanaged environment or a role that requires, very close management from leaders, then it's you're gonna start clashing with that every single day. Um, So I invite you to look into your values. And if you want a structured way of doing it, I recommend the VIA Institute online test. It only takes about 15 minutes. It's free. And it gives you a ranking of your core character strengths. You can find it at viacharacter.org. That's viacharacter.org. And again, this matters because if you know your top values, it is much easier to design your career and decide what aligns with you, and to avoid spending energy on things that bog you down or joining organizations that do not make you feel at ease because they don't align with what you believe. Jacinta Jimenez, on this book called The Burnout Fix, talks about psychological fitness. And that means training your mind the way you'd like to train a muscle. In other words, it's like gym for your brain. Number one, she says that it's very important to be flexible. And that means not getting trapped in rigid ways of thinking. Also, practice self compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness you'd showed a friend. And for instance, in therapy, we ask people to write a letter to a person, to write a letter to herself or himself, but like if it was a friend, like on a third um, as if you were talking to someone else, not to you, right? Because we tend to be very harsh on ourselves, but kinder to other people. So whenever you find yourself beating yourself up, try that exercise. Try talking to you like if you were your friend. Oye, Maria, this is happening. Oye, Jose, if I were you, I would do this or that. And I'm sure it's going to be a lot more um, kind, uh, because that's what usually happens. Also, and this is very, very important, building daily recovery habits, small, consistent pauses that help you reset emotionally. And I've been there because I was, very stubborn in a way, and I used to think that meditation would do nothing for me, that it was like, I don't know, something very it was a waste of time in my mind. I used to work at a place where they had yoga classes, or they had a wonderful gym, but I had this notion that if I took advantage of those opportunities, I was going to be seen as a slacker. So yeah, el que dirán, what would they think, um, plays a very important role in the way we place ourselves in the workplace, and the way we mistreat our bodies, and we stop listening because we're repeating, we stop listening to our bodies, or we don't even listen to it. uh, on the first, for starters, we just don't pay attention to our bodies, because we are repeating all those old patterns and all those embedded ideas that we tend to have. So when when these three aspects align, stay flexible, be kind to yourself, and recover daily, you create sustainable resilience. And it might seem minor, but these very small steps can help you face challenges without burning out, because sometimes you're just so wound up that the smaller things make you feel very, very, very upset, and sick, and unfit. So remember, train your mind as it was a muscle. And that's another thing, is if you stop going to the gym, you start losing all the strength, right? So it's the same with your mind. It's a constant thing that I invite you to do, and it's very important that it's a daily practice, or at least a weekly practice, something that will help you manage whatever comes your way. Talking about old patterns, rest is not wasted time. It's when your brain does some of its most important work. During sleep and quiet moments, the brain consolidates memories, connects ideas, and recharges its ability to focus. Downtime, downtime creates the mental space to process information, spark creativity, and see patterns that you would miss in constant busyness. Now, tell me if this has happened to you. You are at work, something comes up, a big problem, and nothing comes to mind. You feel overwhelmed. And then you say, hopefully, you say, I'll deal with this tomorrow. You go home, you go about your life, and the next day, you have the ability to solve whatever was happening. Or you come and you look at it and you say, oh, yeah, it was this comma, or something else, right? Something very simple. But you were so tired that you couldn't see it before. So, yes, your brain needs rest. And this is something that happens again, it has to do with the threshold I talked about before. Some people have a higher threshold than others, but it's something that sooner or later might begin to happen. So keep an eye out for that. In other words, protecting time for rest, reflection, and even boredom isn't a luxury. It's a core strategy for better thinking, innovation, and long term performance. Okay, so it's not time wasted. As I have mentioned many, many, many times, the body gives you information because it's wiser than we think. Long before burnout shows up, it whispers through tension, fatigue, headaches, that endless craving for caffeine. And these aren't obstacles to push you through, they're information, right? It's not, oh, yeah, I need to push through, I'm not going to listen to it. They are information. Keep that in mind because your body is telling you what you need. Whether it's recovery, reset, it's a way of protecting you. It protects you. But if you're not listening to your signals, tienes que aprender a habitarte. And that's something that I learned the hard way. Um, so the smartest move you can make is to listen, give it time just to do a checkup, close your eyes, and go little by little, starting from your head all the way to your toes. It doesn't take a lot of time, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever you have. Okay. Just go area by area and check on it. And of course, if you're listening, if you're feeling something, honor those signals. Stretch every so often, walk around the office. Better yet, step outside for fresh air. Um, stand by the window and get some real sunlight. Go out and breathe fresh air. You get the idea, right? Now, human connection. Human connection is the most elemental human need. Yet sometimes when you are in high pressure environments, we isolate ourselves, and that works about our well-being. Because when you have comunidad, community, you gain perspective. You feel less alone. And you remember that you don't have to carry everything on your own. And particularly if you're working from home, sometimes that human connection gets, broken. Make time to talk to your peers. If the company doesn't provide time for that, do it yourself. Set up a 15-minute checkup with a coworker, or better yet, take time to go to your abuelitas or your tia's house. Talk to people, join an organization, talk to a trusted colleague before stress snowball. Um, Ask for help. Go talk to your supervisor. Tell him or her how you feel. If you think it's a good idea. If not, talk to someone else. Uh, don't carry all that weight alone. Seek help. And see seeking for help as a strength. It's not a weakness. You can also provide help to other people. Sometimes when you talk to other people, or you listen to another person, you're helping that person, but you're helping yourself too. Sometimes we just need to talk or say it out loud. Hasn't that happened to you when you start, explaining to someone what's going on? It begins to get like more tangible, more organized. It's beginning to make sense. And then you say, oh, it wasn't as terrible as I thought. So now I invite you to reflect, who are the people you can lean on when things get tough, and how you can also provide that support for someone else. I'll give you a couple of minutes for that. Comunidad is key. Here's a big one. Redefine your relationship with work. Work is important. It gives us a structure, income, a sense of purpose. But the problem starts when we turn it into our identity and rules over everything else. When we glorify overwork as if it was if it were a badge of honor, right? Um, this busy bragging that we go around saying, I don't have time. I haven't talked to my mom in I don't know how many weeks because I've been, doing this or that, or I don't have time for vacation, or I only sleep 4 hours. Or I've been in situations where, the greeting that we give to our coworkers is like, oh, you're busy too, right? This is crazy. Or I know you're busy, but so busy becomes like a given. And it doesn't have to be that way because busyness, in my opinion, now that I have been studying this, is sometimes lack of clarity and lack of organization. Hmm. And the reality, as I mentioned before, sooner or later, um, all this work stress, it's unsustainable and it takes away from the balance people should have in life. Us humans are like diamonds with many facets, and work is only one of them. So, yes, work matters. Your career matters, absolutely. But it's not all that matters. Burnout doesn't appear out of nowhere. It shows up when we ignore the signals our body and minds are sending. You know? And this is very important. It's not a moral failure. There's nothing wrong with you. You are human. And burnout or work stress, as we know, work stress then if is sustained for a long time because burnout, it's a signal. And signals are meant to be listened to. So trying to tough it out doesn't really serve us. Those small aches and signs come back louder with more force, and then it's harder, much harder to manage. And the good news is that the brain can rewire, right? We all know about neuroplasticity. Pauses, regulation, and new habits can go a long, long way so we can recover and protect ourselves. And again, breaking the burnout cycle isn't about doing less. It's about doing what matters with clarity and humanity. And now um, I want to give you something very practical. It's an energy audit. Okay, so think of it as a quick map for your day or your week. And this is the way it works. And I know we're running out of time, so you can work on it after the presentation. Um, it's a make two lists side by side, and on one side write down the things that consistently drain your energy. Um, Maybe endless status meetings or doom scrolling or saying yes to tasks you don't have time for. Those things that are a um, that are making you waste time, but you just do it because you don't pay attention to it or you just do it automatically. On the other side, so here's one column with the things that drain you, and on the other side, work on a column um, that includes what energizes you, right? So maybe a walk, a focused coding sprint, a hobby, a conversation with someone who gets you, or simply a good night's sleep or going to the movies or whatever energizes you. right? Because in reality, we tend to think that we need more time. But after we do these kind of audits, we realize that what we really need is to shift things around, because energy, as you know, as we have been saying, it's a limited resource, so we need to protect it. And when we know what drains us and what when we know what fuels us, then you can start making small but powerful shifts. Okay, so doing less of the draining and more of the fueling. And if there was a message that I wanted to bring you today, is that everything starts with awareness. And awareness is what allows us to break the burnout cycle. We're human. It's okay to sometimes feel a little off. But when that happens, it's very, very important that we acknowledge it, because if we ignored it, burnout happens. Okay, so I thank you very much for your attention. I'm gonna close with this quote that captures the essence of my message. We can stop deadlines, challenges, or the pace of change, but we can learn practices that help us ride those waves instead of being drowned by them. And before I go, I want to give you an exercise. If you're feeling very nervous or anxious or off, particularly if you feel that your entire system is all stressed out, I want you to do like a little mariposa, like a little butterfly. Put it on top of your chest. I don't know if the camera is grabbing that. And then flap the wings from one side first, the other side second. Do it for a minute or for as long as you need it. It works wonders, and it has a lot to do with how our brain and our nervous system is wired. But that's a conversation for some other time. Thank you so much for your attention. I invite you to join mesientoquemada.com. Most of the content I create is in Spanish. But you can sign up. There's a bi-weekly newsletter, also free downloadable resources. We offer individual coaching, group programs, art therapy open studios. And I would be very, very grateful if you could please scan this QR code and go through a very simple survey so I can make these presentations more useful to you in the future. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. There are many, many other talks happening today. So I'll see you later. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.